Laura and Jim, what do you think? Should we start?
Yes, I think we're ready to go.
I think so. Let's go ahead.
Okay, terrific.
Can I just,
Please.
sorry, Elizabeth, can I point out one more time for all those that are signing on? If you haven't, please put your name and affiliation in the chat. Okay, I'm good now. Thanks, Elizabeth. Sorry.
No problem. Appreciate that. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are having our October Chicago Wilderness Executive Council meeting this morning via Zoom. We're getting good at this because it's been a while, but I'd like to call this morning's meeting to order. And again, as Nathaniel said, if everybody that's joining us to please go ahead and put your name in the chat. This will help us in our minutes and then obviously establishing our quorum, but we're looking really good. I see a lot of familiar faces. Usually we go around the room and we'd introduce who's here. And with Zoom, it doesn't make it possible, but we have a great showing from many of our different member organizations and partners, and that's wonderful. So thank you. I would like to go ahead and start with the approval of the agenda this morning. If I could have a motion to approve what was sent out.
Jim Anderson will move.
Jim,
Ralph
thank you.
Schultz, second.
Ralph, thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, this morning's agenda is approved. Next, we have the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have for your approval by the council, we have our minutes from July 15th, 2020. We have the acceptance of the third quarter treasurer's report, and that represents the months of what you all have from July, August, and September. You also have the approval of the fiscal year 2021 budget. Our fiscal year starts on January 1st, and everybody in the council had seen a draft budget back in July. So there were a few changes that were made to this document, and that was an investment, an increase on the diversity, equity, and inclusion project, and pulling a little bit more fund reserves. So as you looked at that detail, Mike is not, our treasurer is not on with us today. So if there's any questions, we'll go over that. And then we have the acceptance of our new members. And let's see, Laura, were they in the proposal?
Yes, they're in the next slide. There we go.
So we have the Technology Alliance, Gateway to Doors, and Turnstone Strategy. So that would represent our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move.
Jerry, is that you? Thank
Yes.
you.
Jerry Edelman, yep.
And do I have a second?
Second from Daniel Suarez.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. Is there any discussion on any of those items that are presented to the council? Any hands up? Hearing none. We'll go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. All right, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you so very much, and for all the efforts that went into preparing our treasurer, who's done just a wonderful job, the steering committee that really worked in great detail to put together the budget, as well as exciting for all the great work to bring our new members forward. So thank you so much on that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jerry Edelman and the group here, Jim Anderson, Michelle Carr, Daniel Suarez, Mark Bowman, and Allison Paul, to talk about an update on our Chicago Wilderness Green Vision. So Jerry, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone. So last Friday, there was a 90-minute meeting of over 30 people to discuss and shape the aquatic or water goal for our green vision. It was extremely productive. The breakout groups, what came out, was, I think, a pretty much consensus set of issues and focus. I was hoping that we'd bring to you today the draft goal, but we didn't want to force it. There's been some health issues, a variety of different things that kind of complicated it. So our goal is to have that drafted probably next week. And then we could send it out to everyone. I could work with Laura and Elizabeth here on the best process. But very robust discussion, broad cross-section of interests and perspectives. I think very, very productive. Stacy Myers has been facilitating that on our staff. Jim Anderson has played a wonderful, supportive and leadership role with Stacy in that facilitation. So I guess stay tuned, but a lot of progress has been made and we will be sharing with you the draft very soon. So any questions?
Jerry, I wonder, this is Allison. I just wanted to say two things before we get to your questions. So I'm sure everybody, hopefully everybody remembers, but we sort of had this process on these, the Green Vision coming to life. And we started with 5 goals. We're expanding to 7. The water goal is one of those that'll be included. If you want to flip through, there's a lot of text on these slides, and we're going to talk through them a little bit quickly. So I did add a link there. Let me know if you have any problem reaching that, because we do want people's input on that. So, and I think what you'll hear from a lot of us today is we'd hoped it was all going to be easy and simple and we could just roll it all out for you today. Turns out we're learning a lot and listening a lot, and it's a little bit more complex. So I think that's a great example of that on the water goal as well. So we'll give you guys an overview of where we are on a bunch of these different goals at once, and really looking forward to people's input. So, and now back to you, Jerry, for water questions.
I mean, as Allison points out, this is a process that needs to be collaborative, inclusive, comprehensive, thoughtful, and I think it has been. And again, a number of the goals have been fleshed out, and then several we're still working on, but huge progress is being made. I think it's seen as a very important priority. And it's not just having the goal, but it's then figuring out, well, how do we make that operational through our members? And so it's an important exercise. But anyway, if anyone has a general question about the water, aquatic goal, happy to answer it. I'm sure Jim would as well. But again, we will be getting back to you relatively soon with the draft language.
Great. This is Jim Jarosol. Just a question for you. Do you need, or have you the right group at the table right now? Are you looking for voices or anything else?
Yeah, I do think we have the right group. I mean, people volunteered. We also identified key stakeholders. I mean, there are over 30 people. So I would say that it's one of the larger groups, actually. Drafting, again, it's drafting a goal that then is shared with the entire membership. So obviously open to everyone's input and comments. But I think as far as a core group, it's pretty large and pretty comprehensive. I think it's a great selection of people.
Yeah, I would add that, Jerry, both Stacy and I did a very comprehensive thinking about who was there. And, we had people from Wisconsin, Indiana, we had several of the regional planning agencies, the Illinois State Water Agency. And so there was a good representation. Chicago Rivers was there. And so, again, we're just a group trying to focus and develop the goal. But if any of you have any comments, please feel free to contact Jerry, Stacy, or myself. If there's something that you feel is important to be in the aquatic resource goal, we certainly want to hear from you, even though weren't part of the meeting. So we are looking for input, and we'll be bouncing this back off of everybody on a regular basis to make sure everybody gets a chance to review it.
Well stated, Jim.
This is Daniel. I'd like to just chime in here because I know we've got some new faces and new names at the on the participant list and at these executive council meetings. Just to kind of frame this for just like 1 minute, because I know that, and I think Allison did a good job of this, but just to give everyone a little bit of context. And for those of you who have heard us. As Allison was kind of alluding to, this has been a long process that's been unfolding, and I apologize if any of this is repeat for you, but I think just for the new folks at the table, I'd like to just kind of set the table, so to speak. I'm now entering my third year on the steering committee, and this third year is a new iteration. This is the third year of a new iteration of Chicago Wilderness, as many of you are aware. And these goals were really conceptualized to give us kind of like a North Star, to give us a compass as we kind of engage in this new iteration of Chicago Wilderness, one that goes back to our grassroots a little bit more intentionally. And so for those of you who haven't seen these goals yet, there are 7 goals, and they're broken up into different categories. And a lot of these, it might not seem that surprising when you just look at these goals, but a lot of these really represent some fundamental shifts in the types of work that we're taking on and the types of communities that we're going to be working with. And so the first iteration of Chicago Wilderness really encouraged us all to collaborate and think across political boundaries. And these new goals really help us kind of get to those audiences that we all know and intuitively are part of the conservation conversation, but haven't been engaged in a really meaningful way, at least within Chicago Wilderness. And so really just wanted to call out the agriculture goal, working with agricultural partners. That's a goal that I've been involved with, helping shepherd. We got a little bit of a head start on Jerry and Allison, but we're still we've got our goal, but we're still trying to figure out exactly how to best structure that work. And we've got the first meeting of our new Chicago Wilderness Agriculture Committee coming up right before Thanksgiving. So like Jerry and Allison and Jim have said, if anyone on this call has not heard about this agriculture work and is interested in that, please feel free to reach out to me. And then we're also looking to more intentionally work within the urban matrix, the urban communities of Chicago and outside in a much more intentional way. So Allison shared that link with all of the slides, and that should give you some good idea as to where we're going with this. But there's always opportunities to join the conversation midstream. So please don't be shy about that and reach out to me or anyone else associated with those goals. So I just wanted to bring us back to the top with that. I'm sorry, everyone, for kind of disjointing this a little bit, but I'd be happy to turn it over to anyone else with any updates on any of the goals. Jerry, you already covered water. I don't know if Michelle or anyone else wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the
Actually,
goal
yeah,
five.
can we have Allison go next, and then the next would be climate, yes.
So Laura, go back to the green, do you mind going back to the big green vision one? So this beautiful green vision, we want it to happen. Part of the beautiful mess of us figuring it out is when Jerry, Daniel, Michelle, others of us kind of stepped up and said, okay, we are going to engage stakeholders to kind of suss out what this all looks like and can be. And the part that the Field Museum's been trying to help with is has to do with people's access to nature and benefits that they receive from it. If you look at this green vision, you see those humans are very prominent in there. It's about human health, better quality of life, and we want this benefit for everybody and generations to come. Chicago Wilderness has a strong background in working with people, specifically with children, especially through the Leave No Child Inside work that we've done for a long time. And through climate engagement, through a lot of different work we have done with, to engage people in the region. That being said, part of what feels new in what we're doing now is it's bigger and more expanded. It's not just about kids. It's not just about climate action. It's bigger, and we're bringing together the existing pieces of what's been happening. We're working with the Education Committee on this and many others. And we see this as a place where our work can really flourish and grow. And we have a lot to learn as we do that. If you can go forward now to the goal 5 slide. I wanted to make sure you had the link in part because I'm going to talk through some really wordy slides and expect you to read it and give us input. What happened was, so our process around goal 5, we invited, or I think it was somewhere around 100 stakeholders to participate in an August workshop We had over 50 of them attend that August workshop to identify what are some of the values and principles and just action items we really want to address with this goal about nature access and benefits for people. Turns out everybody wanted to do everything, and we want to do it all spectacularly, so that wasn't a huge surprise. But it was great to have those voices at the table to be sort of some of the building blocks for what turned into the goal. Now, a goal should be simple. You see it here in green kind of put out there, but in order to really include all of what it really means, we also have background information. And we started to put some metrics about what do each of these pieces really mean to people, and what do we hear from members as some of the most important things. So I think what that means is that what should be just sort of an easy, what is your goal, is now a 2.5 page document that we would love to have everybody's input on. And we have continued to have input on. So we, in September, drafted this. We had one-on-one meetings with different stakeholders. We put it back out to partners, anyone who was invited to that workshop via email. And then we had input sessions for people who wanted to weigh in that way. We are still available. This is because a lot of the communications on this come over email, and everybody gets a lot of email. Please, 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 if you have people on your teams or yourself that would like to really dive in on this with us, please let us know. We're happy to just even pick up the phone and call you for a few minutes and get your input. The things that came up really strongly were that in order to do this work, it's going to be really hard for us to say exactly what it is right now, because we need to do more learning and more listening from the communities that are most affected. So we can't say exactly for sure what it's all going to look like until we learn and listen more. And that's part of our process with this goal. So as you look at number 3 here, a lot of that is sort of built in some of the language. Laura, if you could advance to the next few slides here. Again, you can look at these on the link on your own, but this is what this has meant to the stakeholders we've talked with so far. And there's a few sort of bigger questions that come out of it. How do we, when we're talking about access, how do we make sure that the expansions that we're talking about really line up with our regional plans in the region? We heard some strong voices that really said, we can't brush over environmental justice. And that doesn't mean that we need to take it over or become a solely focused environmental justice organization, but to try to connect with communities without really acknowledging and addressing environmental justice issues will not make us be a strong partner for those communities that we say we want to work with. And I think that's something that it was a somewhat new area for Chicago Wilderness to work on. There were a lot of great ideas too, like the role of Chicago Wilderness might be for us to talk about how do we talk about access to green space and creating more green space in the communities that need it the most. But how do we do that in a way that doesn't create what we call green gentrification and drive housing prices up and drive people out of their communities? And what is the role of Chicago Wilderness around members learning about how to do these processes in a more equitable way? A lot of this work, I think, will tie into the diversity, equity, inclusion work that we plan to be doing in 2021, which we'll talk about again here today. And I think that this is a place where we will be sort of trying to talk about what does this really mean for us moving forward. If you want to go to the next 2 slides here. Again, this is sort of some of what we're talking of, trying to make these SMART goals about what does it really mean. We want 10% more children served by environmental education programs. This is something that really, I think, especially now during the moment of COVID, we're really seeing people really wanting to just get everyone outside. It's a great place to be, safest place to be in many cases. And that we have a real opportunity to do that. This last slide here that I will just talk about for a second, I think ties to what I was saying before. We need to learn, we need to listen, we need to really acknowledge some of how decisions are being made, how diverse are we as a group, and how do we really become a more diverse membership that really better represents the region. And that we are going to be moving in that direction and hopefully doing so in partnership with community-based organizations and others. The next slide has contact information for Mark Bowman and myself. So if you are like, hey, I don't know if anybody on my team was here, have we weighed in on these yet? Or I would like to weigh in on it, please shoot us an email. And in terms of our process, we have incorporated, like I said, we turned a small short goal into 2.5 pages to incorporate all of that input. So we will be doing sort of a refinement phase of that and then putting it back out again to stakeholders and groups, and then hopefully including people here on this call that can help us move towards a more finalized version as well. And I'm happy to field any questions about this goal, and if not, we can move on to maybe climate might be the next one.
Thanks, Allison. Great conversation, and I appreciate all the work that's been done to frame that. It's really come a long way from where we were back in July. So important part of our goals. Doug and Michelle, do you want to take nature, climate resilience in your survey?
Thank you. And thank you, Allison and Doug, for all your leadership with, or I'm sorry, and Mark for all the leadership with the people goal. I know this has been a heavy lift, and I'll say from the climate goal perspective, it's been a wonderful support to how we've been thinking about approaching climate. I haven't met everyone on this call. I'm Michelle Carr from the Nature Conservancy, and I sit on the steering committee. And I was asked, like Jerry was asked, and I raised my hand to be the project manager, if you will, for the new climate goal. And the way that I approached this was really in partnership with the current CW climate team led by Doug Stotts. And there are a number of other members who have been working in earnest over years in thinking about how climate goals land in the city or in the Chicago metro region. And so we began meeting back in really early August and just started to think about what would a climate goal for the Chicago wilderness region look like. And there were a couple things that we came to. One is that we wanted to abide by principles of inclusion, specifically including non-traditional CW members and interested non-CW members. And then we also wanted to create something that was a goal that was aspirational, perhaps audacious even in a North Star, because we know how important making progress on emission reductions and climate resiliency is, and how timely it is. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that we were creating tangible short-term strategies and outcomes, back to the reference to SMART goals, specific, measurable, et cetera. And what we're aiming to deliver is a goal that has really 4 elements: adaptation, mitigation, social justice, and awareness or engagement. And that may seem easy. I don't think it seems easy, but it's not so easy. And so this group of the current climate team and several other volunteers have been working to try to weave this together. And so I'm going to turn this over to Doug. And before I do that, actually, I want to share something that inspired me, and I wrote it down, and it was John Ragnar on a recent steering committee meeting said something. Someone asked about how we know when CW is making a difference. And it really imprinted on me. And it's basically that we've changed the culture of conservation. And I look at this green vision and the notion that we can just take on these grand goals and then find ourselves in specific projects, find our own organizations in those specific projects and lock arms in a way that we present to funders, that we are not duplicative, that we are marching to the same vision, and that we're aiming high. It's super powerful and it's super unique. And so I just wanted to express my pride in being part of this. And so Doug, over to you.
Okay. Yes, okay. So Chicago Wilderness is actually been doing a lot of work with climate for quite a long time. The Climate Committee was created a very long time ago, the early 2000s, and has continued under various leadership for the last decade or so. I've been either chair or co-chair of it. And among the things that have come out from Chicago Wilderness on Climate is the Action Plan for Nature, the Climate Action Plan for Nature, which is still a really, I think, useful document for thinking about where we should be thinking about climate in the Chicago region in our natural spaces. Abigail Derby Lewis worked on the climate update for the biodiversity recovery plan, since the recovery plan was really written before climate became part of the area. And since then, there have been several projects that have looked at adaptation frameworks for specific geographies or habitats. And the most recent of those is the Prairie Adaptation Resource, which came out at the start of this year. The other goals, at least the early drafts, included climate language, so how climate might be part of that goal. And it was useful, but it didn't seem like it was sufficient. So that's why we've gone for a specific climate goal, because otherwise climate would always be secondary. And I should say that this does reflect back on previous attempts to sort of imbue climate in everything in Chicago Wilderness, and what ended up happening was climate sort of disappeared from Chicago Wilderness work. So we decided we needed a climate goal. We started with a conversation at the Climate Committee meeting, and since then we've got a small but powerful group that have been thinking about what a climate goal would have in it. And I would just mention other people besides Michelle and I are Susan Ass from Animalia, Ted Hafner from Open Lands, Casey Sullivan from Argonne, Amy Rosenthal from the Field Museum, and Karen Peterson, Susan Donovan, Georgie Garrity, and Sarah Kaliski-Roll from TNC. And so we've started meeting weekly to make headway on this. And they're basically, Michelle already laid out their 4 portions to what a climate goal would have in it. In Chicago, adaptation and engagement have been the focus of CW's work to this stage. We had not done that much with mitigation. It's been a secondary issue, and justice is really a new area for us to be thinking about. So that issue of justice plays into what we just heard from Goal 5, what we broadly call the people goal. Many of the issues that have been raised there are ones there. And one of the big ones is right now we don't have the proper groups at the table to really think about justice. So one of our initial goals on the justice side will be to bring those people to the table. Where we are with the goal at this point is we are working, the idea is our structure would look very similar to what you saw from from Goal 5, with an overall goal and then sub goals, which is where specific what measures would be developed. And we're starting to work on those in subgroups using members of our group to draft language for that. One of the other things, and this sort of came out of thinking about how we involve other groups, was the recognition that we really need to understand where the Chicago Wilderness membership is in terms of climate. So you have all recently received a climate survey that I encourage you to fill out if you haven't done so, that will help us understand what parts of the climate work the membership is really most interested in, Also, what are they currently doing? What are projects that are currently underway that members have, or that they are in the process of developing plans to do? And it will also help us understand what sort of expertise we have to help us reach these climate goals. In particular, I think with mitigation, one of the issues there is we've always sort of talked about mitigation in terms of the what we get in terms of carbon storage out of our local natural areas. But do we need to go farther than that, and where would we go farther than that? Their mitigation is really a global issue. Adaptation tends to be a more local issue, which is part of why we've focused there. And then with justice, we really are starting afresh. So anybody who has great input on that, or even good input on that, we'd love to have you help us think about what a justice component of this goal would look like. I think that's all I have to say at this point. I would just note that there is this climate survey. We've received a number of responses and are just starting to look at what they're telling us. And hopefully everybody here is hard at work filling out their survey at this very moment. So thanks.
And I'll just add, Doug, when Doug, you say hard at work, it's not hard at work. It's like a 2-minute survey. So, so please just take those 2 to 3 minutes and fill it out. It really is helpful. And it went out on Monday in a separate email from Laura. It was also in the newsletter. And it's super important for us to be able to take this inventory of what skills and expertise we have already here. So thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Doug, for your great work and all of the others that are working on that. Do you have a timeline of when, and maybe I missed it, that you want the survey returned by? Did you put a deadline?
We didn't put a deadline. I would say to be relevant, it should be in the next 10 days or so, responses. Because I think we're in the process now of really thinking about the language that will go in the goal, and I would expect that we'll have a solid draft in the next month to 6 weeks.
Excellent.
Yeah, Amy says the sooner the better on the survey, so that's fair.
That's great. Right after the meeting, we're all going to take it, right, and get it done.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, who else on other green vision items that needs to come forward?
This is Jim Anderson, and I'll speak for one of the easier ones that are of the goals, and that is looking at increasing restoration across the landscape. And we have not started to meet, but what I've been doing is talking to several land managers and trying to formulate what we would sit down and talk about. And so I do want to let you know that there's some things going on behind the scenes that, you know, have been going on with Chicago Wilderness for a while, as Doug and Michelle has mentioned about climate change. Certainly, we've been strongly working with the Chicago Regional Tree Initiative and moving forward the Oak Ecosystem Project. For some of you that know, the NRCS has just recently put out a grant call for the RCPP program, Regional Conservation Partnership Planning. I'm not probably getting that correct, but that is a substantial program that I think the Northwest Illinois currently has. And so we've been working on that. And so we want to bring that under our envelope. At the same time, Lydia Scott from the Morton Arboretum has taken on the initiative to try to develop an invasive species board for Illinois and the Chicago Wilderness region. I think you saw that there was a survey for the climate change. There's also a survey out there that Laura sent out for invasive species. And so if we could encourage you to do the same diligence and fill that survey out, that'll be important information. One of the things that I'm currently working on is trying to do an accountability of where we have had an impact on the landscape. So I'm going to be, again, another quick survey that takes a little, no time to do. But looking at everybody that's managing land on the landscape and what have you restored by community type, let's say savanna, woodland, prairie, wetland, and then also what in your holdings has the potential to be restored. And so it's just a real quick try to grab that glimpse of the potential that we could have out there. And then we're also, I think my thinking and a couple other people's thinking is we want to, at the first land managers meeting, when we do that, which should happen within a month or so here, we want to revisit the biodiversity recovery plan and pull out those things that talked about land management, and use that as the basis for us to start to be thinking about what's our next steps. So that's kind of where we're at. That accountability of restored, unrestored. We're also going to look at the Illinois Natural Areas Inventory update that happened, it seems like yesterday, but I think it's been about 5 years now. But that's a really good system to look at where we started originally, the redo, and find out how things have changed over time. So with that, that's where we're at. We're going to be sending out a request. Not everybody, the land management group is been focused on people who are doing active land management. So if there's somebody that isn't in that role that wants to partake, please let Laura or myself know. And then, I think, I don't know if anybody else is going to speak, but I really want to emphasize, I think I wasn't part of the original development of these goals, but sitting on the steering committee and working on these, I think it's really, really important that the climate folks and the people folks understand that they are a really key component of those goals. Without those two, none of the other things are going to be, put forth in a meaningful way. We really have to tie climate change and how we interact with people and get people to interact with nature. Those are really, really important things to make our goal for the land restoration really, really viable. And we need to find out where we need to be more active. And that's part of that, trying to do that assessment. So that's all I have to say today. If there's any questions or anybody that wants to volunteer, just put your name in the chat and we'll catch up with you.
Thank you, Jim. And thank you everyone with these goals. And we've come a long way in just a short time. And it is an iterative process and it continues to evolve. Are there any questions to this point before we move into the next step, which is going to be to talk about the mapping and measurement of these goals?
Hey, Elizabeth, this is Jim Jarzal. I won't take but a minute, but goal number 3, which was the green economy goal. I'm kind of the liaison to that for the steering committee. We've got the corporate council, CMAP has been involved, some others, but we're kind of getting that fired up and figuring out how to look at, corporate campuses, municipalities, other area right of ways, that sort of thing to get that fired up. So I think sort of like the Chicago Marathon, all the fast runners are in the early corrals and some of the slower ones to get started are in the back corral. We're kind of in one of those back corrals getting ready for our time to get running. But it is beginning to move as well. So I just want to let everyone know that.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so if we can turn it over to Mark Bowman and Mark Johnson, and they will talk about the mapping and metrics.
Sure, and maybe, in fact, that's an excellent segue from what Jim just said too, because Mark, my colleague, Johnston, has been working with Iris Caldwell.
Mark, did you
and
want to start us off? Mark Bowman?
Yeah, can you hear me, Mark?
I don't know if I think you might be muted.
Uh-oh.
No, we can hear him.
Hear you, Mark.
Mark J, it might be you.
Yeah. Sounds good. So yeah, Mark, as Mark figures that out, I'll just say Mark has been working with the Rights of Way as Habitat working group, and that's an ingredient in that goal 3 piece. And through that work, Mark has actually developed some ideas here. I think that'll be really helpful to all of us. I just want to say really quickly to frame this a little bit. First of all, just remember how important maps have been to Chicago Wilderness since day one. You know, the Atlas of Biodiversity and the Green Infrastructure Vision as the spatial expression of the Biodiversity Recovery Plan. And then all the great mapping products that have come since and the mapping projects that have come since, including, you know, the green infrastructure work at the county scale and municipal scale, the amazing Southeast Cook County acquisition plan that it really integrates some social indicators in the acquisition pieces. We have to get caught up, I think, at the CW partnership scale to where we left off back in 2012, 2013 with the last iteration of the Green Infrastructure Vision. There's new data. There's community data inputs. There are new platforms. And now we also have the Green Vision, which is starting to sharpen where we're headed. And I think the mapping piece can really support this in really important ways. So as you can see here, we really want to be in an integrating role with each of the goal teams as they develop and sharpen their metrics and so forth. How can we render that cartographically and support all this, and then a visible expression of the value of the Alliance? As you can see, there are a number of goals here. We're aiming to have, we hit the pause button after Congress. Well, this vision conversation got a little more sharply stated. And I think, as you have just seen, it is. Our mapping group really began to hit the accelerator pedal again in September. And I want to acknowledge not just my colleague Mark, but the leadership of Jack Brunner from Tetra Tech and Jason Navoda from CMAP. And then we've had a group that includes Tom Slawski from Sewer Pack and Joe Exel from NERPC. So we've got the regional planning agencies in this tight group, as well as Craig Schillinglaw from Open Lands and Casey Sullivan from Argonne. That's been a tight group at the moment, but that can expand, and maybe we can discover as we start to lay some things out on the at the cafe on the 29th from 12 to 1, an input session around how you use maps and what they mean to you. And in that time since the Congress as well, Mark's done some work too to start to create a visualization of what this could look like for us. And perhaps this can integrate with, this could be a pilot project, or it could integrate with other pilot projects in some significant ways. And I'd like to see, Mark, why don't you go, let's go to the next slide. And let's just take a few minutes to outline something that Mark is working with some of the new technology platforms and trying to do the integration here. So Mark, can you hear?
Great, thanks, Mark.
Go? Okay,
yeah,
good.
You able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is a concept that we put together. This is using Esri. Esri is kind of the industry standard in GIS for software for GIS organizations. And so they've come up with a recent type of software called Hub. And we'd like to use this technology to create a Chicago Wilderness Hub. And so by hub, we kind of mean this idea of an interactive map design that allows for decision support, as we say in the bullet point here. Also that the hub is designed to really work with collaboration. So that's what it was designed for in the beginning, to work even within cities and organizations, to be able to work between departments, and also to work with the public. And so we think it would be a good way to sort of leverage the technology and the support of the different folks involved in the projects. This last bullet point, organizations can leverage their existing data and technology and work together with internal and external stakeholders to track progress, improve outcomes, and create vibrant communities. This is pulled directly from the Esri website, that last bullet point, but we think it fits directly into the type of work that we'd want to do. So in this prototype, the idea here is that we would feature what those prominent goals are. We'd be able to track what those goals are. We could then really have maps that interface with each one of these goals. And the idea is that we know that there's already kind of, in a way, working groups that are supporting each one of these goals, and we'd want those working groups to identify what those key metrics are that we want to track and follow. If we go to the next slide, we could click on, say, the fourth goal as an example, and the next slide just sort of shows some example content, and this is extremely crude right now, but we're just getting concepts together that we can put together things like metrics. So at the top of the page there, we could pull together some key metrics that are identified by that working group for increasing habitat in this example. We can have interactive maps that have the key layers that we could turn on and off. One of the things that we think would be really great is if we can work collaboratively with some of the main data providers, that those data providers could actually help to maintain the data itself. So this isn't just one organization that's sort of keeping this up to date, but that as we see change over time, as we take that input from our user communities, we can see that growth happen in terms of the number of acres, or whatever key metrics we want to follow for each of these initiatives. And let's see, what else do we have here? So yeah, the idea is this could also really be a platform for not just this, but also things like prioritization. So when we think about the GIV, we really want that to be, if there's a new version of the GIV, that it can really be a dynamic version of that, where we have input continuing to go into the model. This could be a place where the GIV, where kind of green equity, different key lenses that we want to look at for where we prioritize our work. This could be a place where we could host that through this type of a platform. And I think the last slide is just to encourage everyone. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, just thanks, Mark. And behind this, actually, there is a web site example that Mark can show, and we can talk about that on the 29th. And we thought it'd be really helpful to have something like this so we can visualize what this could look like for us, but we want to get a real better sense of use. What do people need the maps to tell them? What do they need it to display, both for their work itself and for external communication? So we'll have this mapping session. We did a survey back in the spring. We'll report some of the results preliminarily about that. I want to say just two other quick points. One is that I neglected to mention that Jim Anderson's been part of this group as well. And thanks, Jim. And Jim is also helping us to think in the direction of not only how perhaps this could support the goals and the metrics and the vision, but where does this take us perhaps for the next iteration of the green infrastructure vision itself? So there's a conversation we're having. And secondly, I just want to acknowledge some other really great mapping work that's been happening in the region. Nature Conservancy's Green Print project has done a wonderful job at a somewhat limited geographic scale to put together, again, these elements of people and nature, and where organizations like and partnerships like CW can really lean in to the work. So just want to note that that's been highly influential as we think about this. So happy to take any questions or come talk to us on the 29th.
Questions from anyone? Thank you, Mark and Jack and the team that has been working on this, Jason. It's great to see that all coming together, very visual and having those numbers in a place. And now that leads us to the next conversation that we want to have. And that is actually boots on the ground demonstration that's going to help us achieve those goals and the metrics that we want to map. So John and Jim, take it away.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This is John Rogner. For those of you who I don't know, I work for the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and I serve on the steering committee as well. And I want to, for those of you who haven't been part of this conversation, and I know a number of you have, I wanted to share with you some conversations we've been having with funding organizations related to the green vision and support we might get from them. And what I've heard today actually is so exciting, because I can see we're getting ever closer to the point where we'll have some great visionary and inspirational pilot projects to pitch to funders. And that's important, obviously. We for those of you who have been with Chicago Wilderness for quite a while, you'll recall back in the earlier days, we had significant funding from several federal agencies as well as from local funders and others. And we had in any given year between $1 and $2 million a year to work with. And through that, we supported a significant staff function and also then had dollars to do projects on the ground and through across all of our various teams and focus areas. So we had a lot of gas in the tank back in those days and got a lot of great work done, including Atlas of Biodiversity and the Biodiversity Recovery Plan and some of the documents that we still use today that are very relevant. And as you all know, we're in a different place right now. We don't have sort of dedicated external funding like that. We're powered through a lot of our own contributions, which is not insignificant. And thanks to everybody for supporting this coalition. And we do have Laura who's helping us and providing critically important contributions. But to get out there and do project work, we're going to need more than that. And so beginning last spring and then into summer, we had a couple of conversations with a couple of regional funders in the area. And it was very encouraging and remains very encouraging. We shared with them where we were headed in this new day of Chicago Wilderness. And what we heard was encouraging because in their minds, we as the coalition are the voice of nature in this region. We are the ones who need to lead, and they are expecting us to lead. And they have indicated they would like to rally round us if we can show that leadership that they expect from us. So essentially, we've been invited to really step up and share our vision and share where we're going with them. And then in turn, they would be happy to introduce us to perhaps a broader suite of funding organizations. And by the way, funders look to organizations that align themselves toward common goals and common objectives. And as Michelle alluded to earlier, that's a powerful thing when we can get many organizations all pulling in the same direction and working toward the same kinds of outcomes. And that's precisely what we're trying to do here right now. So they applaud our goals. They applaud how we're being strategic and how we're really focusing in on results and on outcomes. And that might be an area where we weren't as strong as we could have been back in the day. And so this is a good direction, I think we realize, but also in their view as well. And what they have suggested that they'll need to really introduce us to a broader audience of funders is a set of project ideas. I won't even call them proposals at this point, just project ideas that we think would move us toward our goals, which are aggressive. I'll use Michelle's words, they're audacious in some ways, but it's okay to have those kinds of stretch goals and really push us toward where we need to go. And they would like to see a suite of pilot project ideas that we think would best move the needle toward those goals that we've set for ourselves. Now, this is a challenge because they're asking us to work quickly on this, but pilot projects really need to work from our goals to our sub-goals and objectives and strategies and actions. And ideally, you'd like to have the whole sequence laid out all the way out to metrics by which we would measure our progress toward our goals. And we're not there yet, although I see tremendous progress that's being made. The nature access work that Allison talked about earlier, I'm really impressed with the progress that they've made. Also the climate change group. I love seeing the mapping stuff that the Mark Squared talked about right before this. But it's a bit of a chicken and an egg, but I think we really need to see how quickly we can develop some project ideas and put them out to these funders so that we can be introduced to a larger suite of funders beyond that. And so I think that's our challenge is to see how quickly we can move on that. So I think that's all I really wanted to share with everybody. Jim Anderson has been working a bit on some project ideas. And Jim, I'll turn it over to you to talk a bit about that and share what you'd like to with us.
Thanks, John. And I think John laid out a really good scope of what we want to put forward to these potential funders. You know, it is, we don't want to be taking a lot of time to think about all the ins and outs of the specific pilot projects. And so we have been working on some, you know, that, so I'm just going to run through a couple of examples that could be projects that we put in front of our funders for thinking. And one of them's recently, I know Lydia Scott has been working on this invasive species board. And so that might be something that we think about as a project for across the Chicago Wilderness region. As a land management agency manager from the Forest Preserve, I have to say that invasive species are becoming a real critical thing for the health and wellness of our natural communities. And so something along the invasive species board, getting that up, you know, there is the Midwest invasive species plant board, but we used to have a more robust invasive species program in the region. And so trying to reestablish that might be a very good idea for a project. Certainly one of the projects that it has a lot of merit is, as Mark and Mark were talking about, is the revisiting of our green infrastructure plan. You know, we've gone from where we were, you know, the GIV that we currently have is not quite as functional as we hoped it would be. And there's a lot of new information out there. And so a project that comes to mind to me and from the mapping group is, you know, what is it exactly, you know, we would like to do a possible feasibility study to see what it is that's out there that we can use to map things. How can we pull it together? How does it influence the climate change group? How does it influence people group? That whole thing. And I will note that I put in the chat a really good example of where we might go is and I really applaud Cook County for this. They did a Southeast Cook County land acquisition plan that took a lot of the social equity and financial equity issues into their plan. And I think it's also reflected in the green print work that TNC did. So things like that are things that we want to think about if we're moving forward with a new mapping exercise, that we include those things. Another thing that we have discussed at the steering committee, we have several people that have stepped up to lead these goals. And so we're trying to make sure that the goals are consistent with each other. But then there's this whole other layer of, so we have this goal. We're going to take care of climate change. We're going to educate all the people. We're going to restore all the land. We're going to put green infrastructure around every building. Well, how do we do that? And so there was discussion about a facilitated process to develop short-term tactics and metrics and have someone facilitate us through that process so that we can be thinking about the same thing. And so that we have this, I really think it's important for Chicago Wilderness to speaking the same voice all across the 7 different goals. So that was another one. Another thing that could be a possible project is determining the mitigation for carbon credits on an acre by acre basis for different communities. I know CMAP has done some work on looking at that, but I think our numbers are so large and they're in the billions of dollars, they don't reflect well. If we had a number per acre, many organizations, corporations like Abbott and AbbVie and Baxter and others are all looking for a means to reduce their carbon footprint, but they don't want to just say, here Forest Preserve or here TNC or here someone, just here's dollars, do something. They want to know what they're getting back. And so by having some kind of a regional number for this could help facilitate the process of them just donating money to a particular agency that meets their goals. And the last one was along the agricultural goal is to just think about getting a lot of dollars and saying, all the forest preserves or anybody that owns, including IDNR or any other agency that owns ag lands, could we get enough dollars from someone to put cover crops on all of our ag lands through the region and act as an example or a pilot project for larger farmers that are on private land. And so those are kind of the ideas of projects. We encourage you to think about what your goal might have or what projects you might have in mind. The projects don't really need to they need to be based on our goals, and they need to also show that we are using whatever we're developing to further our cause, to take the next step. And so I think we have to be cautious about what projects we put in. They have to be thought out a little bit, but we don't need this big explanation for it. Right now, we're looking for sort of, I guess, a barrel of projects to put on forward to this group so that they can take it out to the funders. So if anybody's got any questions, John and I would be happy to answer them.
This is Jerry Edelman, and thank you both. And I think this is an exciting opportunity. I just wanted to add that in addition to thinking creatively about things on the horizon that you would like to do, maybe are shaping already, that fit these goals, I think it's also important to illustrate concretely with funders that we're already doing work that resonates with these goals, that these goals are relevant and that they can shape action on the ground. So if you already have a project that's in a sense furthering the goal even before the Green Vision has been fully adopted, let us know about that too. I think that's part of the reconnaissance.
Thank you, Jerry. That's a very
about the future, but also stuff that you're presently doing and planning.
Thanks, Jerry. That was very good. I meant to mention that. Thank you for doing that.
Wonderful. Again, thank you, John and Jim, for leading this area. I believe there is going to be some type of template or form that we will be making available to Alliance members and teams in working groups so that you can do a self-assessment, identify things that are already working and aligned, and then ideas that you're thinking collaboratively that could be a potential key project, so that we can get an inventory and basically an easy, it's not really a program or a grant application, but just the ability to kind of know what's going, and then we can take all that data in. So Laura, I believe you'll be getting that out once the steering committee has time to refine all of that. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
So be looking for that, everyone. Another thing to get on your list and to get engaged with. All right, so that's anything else from anyone before we leave the Green Vision and move forward? It's just a great amount of work that's being done. This is why we exist, and to make the region greener and to bring the people involved with it. And again, there's a lot of work. And I think with the working groups, as we begin to push this out with communications and messaging, that an opportunity to enlist the work that you're already doing within your working groups as well, to see how you can fit in. And again, all groups are welcome to have individuals from your organizations helping us lead these, because more the merrier. We need more help to make this come alive. So thank you. Which then leads me into our nominations and recruitment process. As we've established kind of the new version of CW, we come to the time of the year where steering committee members, individuals rotate off. They can come back on serving one term and then being able to re-up for an additional term. And we've identified two members of the Alliance, Linda Lancaster, who has led up and has worked with us in the past on nominations and recruitment, and then Daniel Suarez from Audubon, who also sits on the steering committee. So I'm going to turn it over, Daniel, because Linda's not with us, to lead us through your process and where we are with our recommendations for this upcoming year.
Sure thing. Thank you, Elizabeth. And yes, Linda couldn't be here today, so I'll take over explaining what we did here. And so as I mentioned before, the Chicago Wilderness Steering Committee in its present form has only been around for a few years, and we're still finding the best size and shape and content that we take on. And so last year we had a really overwhelming response to our call for nominations. And as a result, we then expanded the size of the steering committee. And this year, similarly, we received a really nice positive number of interested individuals. We had over a dozen nominees who either nominated themselves or nominated a colleague. And the process that we employed, we had a Google form that all nominees had to fill out that had important information beyond just their names and their organizations, but how long they've been involved with Chicago Wilderness, what they know about Chicago Wilderness, and ideas for things that they could bring to the table. And, you know, this process is always difficult because we would have been discouraged if we had only gotten 3 nominations for the steering committee. That would have made it somewhat easy because then we could have accepted everyone. But we had to turn some people away, and we were looking for the best way to do that. And so we kind of tried to identify gaps within the steering committee as we saw them. And right now we're kind of in this period of kind of growth and kind of reshuffling the deck in terms of what our priorities are. And so a couple of things that we always want to keep in mind as we're building out the steering committee are making sure that we pay attention to the diversity of the steering committee, not only things like race and gender, but geographic diversity, because we're a large alliance. We cover 4 states, and we want to make sure that within the steering committee, we've got good representation. And so this year we received, as I mentioned, about a dozen nominees. At the end of last week, we identified those 3 folks that we were going to ask to be on the steering committee, and that's Dave Giordano, Amy Rosenthal, and Maggie Solis. And we are excited, and if you're on the call, I know Amy is, welcome, and we're excited to work with you. And for those that didn't make the cut this time, you know, we don't want this to become a popularity contest, and we don't want to necessarily just leave the nomination process open for voting by general members who might not know those individuals or their organizations. We didn't want to create that kind of a dynamic, and so in the last couple of days, we've reached out personally, one-on-one, to everyone that was not offered a steering committee seat, both to reiterate our thanks for their interest, but also an acknowledgement that there are so many other avenues of participation that we would like for them to explore. There's such a big need for leadership and participation on committees that are currently formed, or committees that we need to form to meet our Green Vision goals. And so the overwhelming response from all of those people that we reached out to was positive. Folks are excited, even if they can't participate on the steering committee, they're excited to jump into the committee work. And I have a couple of follow-up calls scheduled with some of those folks, some of which are on the call right now. So if you are one of those people, again, thank you, and thank you for joining us on this executive council meeting. But we will be reaching out to those folks and finding, we'll kind of work to see, answer any questions as steering committee members on where their help is needed, or to answer particular questions about committees. So for those of you that lead committees or are on committees, you might find that we'll be reaching out in the coming days or weeks to see if you can provide any input on needs within your committee, so that we can take some of these really these go-getters that put themselves up for nomination on the steering committee and place them within your committees for help. So I don't know if I covered everything there, Elizabeth and Laura, but again, we just want to thank you, and on behalf of Linda and myself, thank you for the interest. Thank you for nominating people, and for those that didn't make the cut, we will keep their names kind of in a list, and next year when we have nominations again, we will reach out to those folks to see if they are still interested in serving. So I'm happy to answer any questions or comments on that. And then after I do that, I will put forth a motion to accept those nominees.
Thank you, Daniel. And just to underscore, so we had Allison Paul, and we will recognize her. She will be going off. She is elected to not continue, although she is in her first 3-year term. And Allison, thank you so much for all of your great work, and we look forward to celebrating you at the January meeting, and appreciation for all the work that you've done. As well as 3 members are continuing on. So Vice Chair Jim Jarzal from NICOR, Treasurer Mike Lester from Cardno, and then Daniel Suarez from Audubon, and 4, Dave Schimberg from Riverwoods Preservation Council. So they were already on for their first term, and they're continuing on. And then we had 3 spots to slot. And as said, a lot of great interest, and appreciate all of the individuals that step forward with an interest to serve in this capacity, and there's plenty of room and opportunity. Any questions from the council about the process or the candidate slate that's being advanced? All right, Daniel, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I would. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2020 nomination slate beginning in January 2021 through December 2023 as presented for all of the names listed on the screen.
Jim Anderson will second.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay? All right, motion carries unanimously. Welcome aboard. We look forward to working with all of our new steering committee members, and again, reaching out and having a personal conversation for those that shared an interest. So thank you. All right. The next item that I want to talk about is our efforts, which, as you've heard on the Green Vision goals, a ribbon that's running through the new version of Chicago Wilderness is the importance of inclusion and representing the communities that we serve, and seeing that ourselves, that we're reflecting very much that we're at a critical time, and if we're really going to be effective in all of our work, it's going to mean that we need to have access, and it just isn't going to stand alone necessarily. as a goal for this type of work, although it should be a ribbon that's going to run through all of the goals that we're working forward. So from where we were in July, the Executive Council, we have the steering committee put together a proposal, which we did, and we put it out on the street to identify and have a consultant that would be able to come in to assist us with our justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. That proposal was on the street, and we received 5 proposals by our deadline of the October 8th. What we felt was very important, and as we're just beginning to review these by the steering committee, we did receive 5, was the importance of having a working group that would assist us. And so we've reached out, and I've had conversation with Karina Ruiz from Audubon, and she has agreed to assist me in putting together a working group that will help work with the steering committee. The working group being representative of not necessarily organizations or partners that are under the tent right now with Chicago Wilderness, but truly are doing great work in this area. And I think that will help us to not only recommend a consultant that we can feel real good about our work, and help us in areas, because we are all learning. Some of our organizations are doing this work. Some of us are further ahead than others. Some of us have a ways to go. And because we're so geographically diverse, you know, we want to find the best way and what is it that Chicago Wilderness should be doing. And so as you are seeing in the reforming of some of these goals, obviously the consultant will play a key role in ensuring that, you know, we have an open, inviting environment, and that we're not doing anything unnecessarily that provides barriers for access. So for today, because that process is just beginning, proposals have received, what I'd like to ask on behalf of the steering committee to the Executive Council is to grant the steering committee the ability to select a consultant and to be able to contract with a consultant. In the budget for upcoming next year, we have $15,000 up to. So as we receive the proposals, to scale that right. And then obviously as this work continues, there may be opportunities for additional fundraising or grants that we can apply for that can help us, depending on what, after our first assessment, what we need to be doing. So again, I'm looking for authorization to allow the steering committee in tandem with this working group to bring a consultant forward and to begin the process, which we would look to begin in 2021. Any questions? So do I have a motion that would allow the steering committee working with the working group to select a consultant on our Justice, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion initiative?
This is Jerry Edelman. I so move.
Jerry, thank you. Do I have a second?
Jack Brunner, second.
Thank you, Jack. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, motion by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, thank you very much. It's unanimous, and we will continue to do the work. All right, that turns me over now. I will turn it over to Ralph Schultz, who is one of the co-chairs of our Excellence in Ecological Restoration Commission on our EERP program.
Thank you, everyone. Let me just one change here. Our 2021 Excellence in Ecological Restoration Program is being planned. We are currently working on updates to the program manual, and we'll be able to release some of that information hopefully here before the end of the year. We do have, and I've lost my agenda, but we do have a couple of items of business that we'll need to take up with regard to the word escape, with regard to establishing the commission. All of our commissioners are willing to continue to serve. Is there another slide, Laura?
No, there's
No.
not.
Okay, so that was just a quick update. We wanted to let you know. The commissioners, again, are all willing to serve again into 2021. So our call for applications would occur in January of 2021 and run through most likely March of 2021. And there really wouldn't be any field work by the commissioners until June, most likely May, June, July of the year, with the Executive Council making final selections in October of 2021.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate all your great work and that this is continuing forward for next year. Okay, so now we're going to go into team and working group updates. And Jim, I'll let you lead this section.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think here we've heard a lot about the green vision and a number of things happening here, but we wanted to open this up for any of the other teams or working groups, anything substantive that you want to bring to the table and discuss as a group.
Jim, this is Cherie Fisher.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So I'm the chair of the Dr. George B. Robb Force of Nature Awards. The first round of awards was given out in 2017, the second round in 2019, and we're now planning for the third round in 2021. I'll give you briefly the timeline that we've sketched out so far. Laura Riley and I discussed that August can be the third rail of group planning and deadline, so we tried to avoid August altogether. So what we have right now is starting publicity in June, nomination period open July 12th through September 10th, review period from mid-September to early October, awardee decisions by the October Executive Council meeting, and then an award ceremony and member event where the awards would be presented in early November. So all, you know, we're looking at about half a year before any of this gets started, but we will be looking to all of you for help with recruiting reviewers. Again, that'll be mid-September through early October for the review period. We'll also be looking for sponsors and presenters at the ceremony, and the award criteria will be much the same as in past years. So I'll just read the sentence that we've used in the past. The Dr. George B. Robb Force of Nature Awards celebrate the people, organizations, programs, and projects that go above and beyond to advance Chicago region conservation. So look for that to get started in the middle of next year. Thanks, Jim.
And so excited to have that award, you know, with Dr. Rabb's name on it like that. That's just such a great way to honor his legacy and his support of Chicago wilderness. What a cherished gift that's been for us. Any other teams or group updates? I think while we're waiting, if anyone else has any update on the corporate council, I might just add, corporate council has been meeting and is engaged. This effort on the green, you know, our goal number 3, green economy, is something that we're using as a, you know, kind of a lightning rod to gather around and to try and coalesce. Really super happy to have Maggie join us on the steering committee. She has been active in the corporate council and has a lot of passion around this goal as well. So Maggie Solis will be a great addition. But making some nice progress. The corporate council, you know, we're kind of in the mode, I think, of the rest of the organization as far as trying to figure out how to grow the group and advance us forward. So kind of put some thought to that. Our next corporate council meeting is, as you can see, November 12th at 1 o'clock. That's where we're going to be digging in a bit more. I'm no longer the chair of corporate council, as you know. Sarah Race from ComEd as the current chair. And I'm not sure if Sarah's on, if you had anything to say. I don't believe she's on, but any other group meetings or team updates?
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it, and all of the work that's being done by all the working groups. So Laura, why don't you give us an
All
update?
right.
What you got going on?
Well, it's been a busy quarter, as you can tell, and I'm really excited that we've gotten this far with the great work that's being done on the Green Vision, and look forward to moving that forward. And some of the things that were touched on is the next step of engaging new partners, new leaders, and new future team members for all the work that's going to be happening in the next several months. And so I am inviting anyone who at your organization, if you have people that you think would be interested and benefit from learning more and getting more engaged with some of the work that we have going on here, please send me their name and email. I can just create a partner profile, and then they can join the teams and groups that they're interested in. And I think several of the teams are seeking co-chairs or new members. And I think it's a great way to sort of move through the process of learning more about Chicago Wilderness and being able to take a leadership position. The other, as you can see, our partner renewals begin on November 1st. You'll start seeing emails about that. Let me know if I can help facilitate anything with your invoice, your login, or any of the information that you might need in order to do that. And I do have a new partner letter that we've been working on through the steering committee. And if you are working in the community with groups that you think would like to learn more about Chicago Wilderness and get involved as we take this next step to achieve the full Green Vision, feel free to send me their name, or else I can actually create a link on our website, and you can take the letter and talk with them, engage with them, and invite them to become a part of this, because this is going to be a very exciting 1 year, 5 year growth period that we have here. And I think the more people that we can welcome under the table to get involved with this work, the more quickly we will achieve these goals and achieve this vision. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. So thank you very much.
Laura, thank you for all of your great work and keeping things running. It has been busy. You've had to pivot through many different activities. And again, appreciate you put a lot of time in. So we're all greatly on behalf of the Alliance, we thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Right. So. Exactly. All right. The next thing we have on the agenda is announcements. And I do just want to start off by saying, thank you to Jerry Edelman for Open Lands, had their virtual 3-day, I don't know what I call extravaganza opportunity, and extended that to Alliance members and those. And I want to thank you, as well as Debbie Moskowitz, who did receive the Conservation Leadership Award. And so I just want to thank you and congratulate and give Debbie a round of applause of acknowledging that achievement. So congratulations, Debbie.
Elizabeth, could I just add that the video about Debbie is still live and available through the 23rd. So if those of you who haven't seen it, it's very moving that her colleagues, expressing their great appreciation for all that she's done. And, so if people still would like to see it, it's available.
Great. And thank you, Jerry, for your generosity of making that available to Alliance members. Other announcements.
Elizabeth, this is Mark Bowman from the Field Museum. I just dropped into the chat a couple of notes about the Calumet Heritage Area. The partners in the Calumet region are really behind this overall effort. And the moment of having the sitting congressman in Northwest Indiana introduce the legislation to actually make it happen, he decided to let it pass while he retires. So, but at a a forum, candidate forum a couple weeks ago. All three candidates for the first congressional district said that they would support it. So I've just dropped in a letter to the editor that sort of reminds the candidates of what that means. You might want to take a look at that. And while you're at it, go take a look at the Calumet Heritage Area website that has been inspired by Jerry and the I&M Canal. And I think the Heritage Area effort in general is a good fit for things in the Calumet region.
Thank you, Mark.
Elizabeth, if I could just add something quickly here, that as I think all of you know, Senator Durbin has introduced legislation to create a 21st Century Civilian Conservation Corps, over $50 billion and extraordinary broad focus that would certainly have significant impact within our region, across the country as well. It's the Renew Conservation Corps legislation. Probably not going anywhere as freestanding legislation, but it's a program that's been vetted extensively throughout the state. John Rogner played a very important role in shaping it, and around the country with other land trusts and so forth. So I think if you can, if you're from Illinois, thank the senator for his leadership. If you're from one of our neighboring states, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, get your members to support it. We believe that a House bill is going to be introduced very soon as well to generate broad support, so that we're positioned, especially if there's a new administration, to get this incorporated into their program. So thanks for your support, and just wanted to remind everyone to, again, if you're from Illinois, to thank the senator for his leadership.
And Jerry and John, thank you. Again, very important, and again, will be demonstration of boots on the ground of how to get new audiences working to green the area. The other thing I think too, with the upcoming election and depending on where that goes, there's going to be some stimulus monies. And so projects as COVID, the outdoors became very important, and hopefully there's some resources available in working to have some shovel ready restoration projects and green infrastructure projects to that we can tee up there and have be part of the work that we're doing in the region. Any other announcements? All right, so again, I thank everyone for your time this morning and for all the great work. Each of you are making a big difference here, and it's just inspirational. We will meet again, likely through Zoom in January. Again, we've got the calendar scheduled. We meet 4 times a year, a lot of work in between. The steering committee will be meeting again this afternoon at 1 o'clock just to follow up. And everybody stay well. So thank you. The motion to adjourn.
Jim Anderson making a motion.
Who was the second?
Second, Allison.
Thanks, Allison. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of
Thank
the
you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, are we meeting later today?
Yeah, I think it'll be a quick call just at 1, just if there's any next steps to follow up. I know you said you had a pretty tight schedule.
I can do it for like a half an hour.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. I don't think there's gonna be much. I think it's just gonna be if there's any like real next steps that need to be talked about or decided on. And I think that Jerry can't make it, and maybe somebody else, but yeah, we'll keep it short. Thanks for everything. And thanks for catching that. I thought I had sent the invite to Jack. He's always like he's almost like an automatic on that. So I just omitted him by accident.
Well, yeah, it wasn't me, it was Mark. We were kind of privately chatting, and he was suggesting all those slides, and I said, yeah, those would be good slides to bring up. And then he said, oh, I'm looking at the appointment. I don't see Jack. I said, oh.
Yeah, no, sorry, it was totally an oversight. So thanks for
Oh,
both of
great.
you for catching it. Yeah, and that's great. I think that'll be nice to have those slides. And I don't have a presentation lined up for the corporate council meeting, but I feel like if we kind of flush this out on Friday, that probably will be the presentation and the discussion can continue with that. So
I think so, because I think like a couple, those slides that Mark was showing about, you know, like this little framework. And I think the slides that what was it? The one that Allison had, you know, where she kind of laid out like some of the goals and the sub goals. I think that those couple slides and then the couple slides that Mark had, I think that just sort of puts a little bit of idea of where we want to try and get to. You know,
yeah, maybe what I'll do, why don't I compile those together with the Green Vision intro again, and maybe share them for some review, and we can kind of go through it and workshop it in any way on Friday too, if we want. So
yeah, because I think that helps. I think that helps us get into an idea of where we're going to go.
Yeah,
and then we can start really making some tracks.
I feel like things went really well today. I think overall, it was good for people who hadn't been engaged as much with the Green Vision work to really hear what's going on. It definitely showed some real progress. So I think hopefully.
No, I thought so. I thought it was very good.
Good. All right. Have a great day. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.